Order.
Yeah.
If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we have a quorum and we're trying to get, I guess, Mr. Dawson online. Let's see what happens. All right, for you know, it's been posted. We have minutes from the March 22nd meeting. Are there any questions, additions, deletions, corrections? And second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any dissent? All right. All right, we're here primarily to talk with Mr. Jared Fralix about the 2024 transportation sales and use tax projects. Oh, citizen comments, I skipped that. Thank you.
That did it.
You did that.
Yeah.
Are there any comments from anybody on not related to the meeting agenda? All right. All right, Mr. Fralix, you're up. Thank you, sir, for being here. Looking forward to your presentation. I know you've done this a number of times. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, kind of speak to you about sales tax, everything that's involved, both the existing sales tax and the future sales tax. April 3rd, obviously, it's not today, but just to reiterate, we've talked about this several times in several different forums, and glad to be here today to talk to your group about this. So, Libby, I don't know that I can control the slide, so if I can get your help. I think it's actually PDF.
Yeah, okay.
So scroll down.
Let's see.
So, before we start about where we're going, I think it's important to hear where we are and what we've done in the past and what we're doing with our last sales tax, which is 2018 sales tax. And we get this question, before we even start talking, we get this question, well, you haven't finished the other projects. So, again, very pertinent that we talk about that today. And I'm going to ask Brittany Bishop. She's our transportation program and finance manager in the engineering department. She is really tackling a lot of this. Obviously, we have other staff members and a consultant, but she's running with a lot of this and has the most pertinent information on specifically where we are. So just a quick overview. I think I've got the next two, and then I'll hand it to her. There was 4 projects for $120 million on 2018 sales tax. One being the bridge to Hilton Head for $80 million, excuse me, and then $30 million for Ladies Island projects, which includes 9 different road projects there in and around 21 and 802. And then lastly was 24 different road projects for $10 million, or pathway projects spread out on different roads throughout the county for $10 million. So scroll down if you could. So the first one, this is the one that gets a lot of attention, and this is probably my least favorite one to talk about. Probably not as important for this group, but again, in talking about sales tax, this is an important element, and you guys just need to be updated, just to be educated citizens. So 278, where we are actively working through the environmental process and the NEPA document, and we have been for some period of time. As you're aware, we've had several independent reviews, and Town of Hilton Head is currently finishing up what is the 3rd and hopefully final independent review of the existing plans and what's been developed so far. Over the last 4 or 5 months, we've actually had a lot closer coordination with the county has, and trying to figure out, okay, what is it really going to take to move this project forward? And they're continuing to finish up the report, but as they're getting towards the end of that report, what's the most recent actions that have taken place is that they had 4 alternatives that the independent study came up with and said, hey, DOT, will you take a look at these alternatives and give us feedback on whether they're viable or not, the feasibility. So DOT, that was earlier at the end of April, they provided that. DOT provided some response in the first part of May, about 2 weeks ago, and said, hey, we've looked at all four of these, plus a fifth one from an active group that's been following the project, and said for different reasons, whether it's right of way, whether it's impacts, whether it's cost, there was a host of different reasons that they outlined, but really that there's not much viability to any of them except the one that is in the existing alignment. And so that was a good feedback that they've given back to that committee. That committee is wrapping up their recommendations to town council right now. Then in addition to that, we've had very good conversations with DOT and Federal Highway, us being the county, the town, and Senator Davis' assistance in that. And basically, I said we're in this environmental process. Well, the environmental process, once we start, you have 3 years. That document has a life of 3 years before it expires. We started this process with preferred alternative in March of 2021, or excuse me, July of 2021. And so our document expires in the end of June. And if a decision is not made and rendered by Federal Highway that the NEPA document is a FONSI, a finding of no significant impacts, then that process starts over in some form or fashion. So whether it can be amended and it's a shorter 4 or 6 month process just to update, or if it's a full start over. So that's a hard timeline that we have. So we had a meeting with, like I said, the county and the town, and Senator Davis met with DOT and Federal Highway to discuss this. And where Federal Highway is, they're the decision maker at the end, and they, in order to move the project forward, they need to receive municipal consent from the town. So following that forward, some specific requests to the existing alignment, since we got a determination from DOT, they said you need to stay within the existing alignment. So again, the county and town worked together and made a petition for 3 specific requests to, again, limit the impact inside the Stony community. That's probably the biggest component of the project that we all hear about. And so we're not going to be able to eliminate the impact, but how much can we reduce it? So we made a request specific to that. They actually came back last week and said yes to that request. However, that request is contingent upon municipal consent. So municipal consent is planned for the town in the early part of June. And if provided, then that would be sent to Federal Highway in the document, the FONSI document, for their review and approval. And if so, then they would review that and hopefully give their blessing and approval there at the end of June, 1st of July. If we're successful with that, then the project moves into final design and right-of-way acquisition and utility coordination and moves the project into full and high gear. And that is 100% the update. There is some funding components too that we're working through with the state. Different topic, but that too. So a couple different things, balls in the air. Hopefully in the next 2 months, we'll see a lot of updates on 278. All right, Brittany.
Brittany, can you scroll down to the next one, maybe? All right, so Ladies Island corridor traffic improvements is one of the buckets that was listed in the 2018 sales tax referendum. Like Jared mentioned, there were 9 projects, or are 9 projects located along US 21 business, SC 802. So we're starting off with some of the projects that we have completed. Sam's Point Turn Lane obviously was the first one to get completed. That one was able to get completed as quickly as it was because we were able to leverage local funds that we already had in order to get the design started for it. So that project was completed, I believe, in 2021. And then also the other project that is completed in Ladies Island is Airport Frontage Phase 1. And that's from Lost Island to Airport Frontage Circle. That gives everybody in this area a connection to make a safe left turn at a signalized intersection. All the other projects are in design except for Mayfair Court Extension. When we went to public comment, the citizens did not want us connecting to a private road or taking over the private road, which is William Street. Therefore, that project has been put on hold. We recently had a public meeting on 2 of the projects in this area. If you were able to attend, thank you very much. We did airport frontage phase 2, which is currently in design and about to begin permitting. It's gonna connect Little Creek to Lost Island and then ultimately to that signalized intersection to make a safe left turn. The main line corridor eventually in this area is gonna have a median to reject left turn movements coming out of those roads. So this way we get to them to a safe access point. The other project that we had was Ladies Island Middle School access road. It's a realignment for the school, and that's gonna connect to Gade Drive and Hazel Farm. There'll be a signalized intersection here, and Cougar Drive will be closed. Meadowbrook Drive extension, we are still working on. It has been designed about 90%. We have right-of-way issues that we have been trying to contact property owners. So we're still working through that. That's gonna provide the business center south of Sea Island Parkway an access to get over to Dow Drive and then up to the signalized intersection to make a left-hand turn. Once again, the mainline corridor is gonna have some medians to restrict those. Hazel Farm and Gay, along with Sunset and Miller, those are both approximately at 60% design. We'll be coming to a public meeting here in the summer to discuss those projects with the community and get those inputs. Beaufort High School realignment, that has been studied by 2 different firms so far. There have been 5 different alternatives, and at this time, there's not a preferred alternative. So in the Ladies Island Village Center Master Plan, that is one of the scope items that we will be looking at when we do the master plan. Is there any questions on Ladies Island projects? Yes, sir.
Brittany, the airport frontage
Yes,
road,
sir.
that's only complete to Lost Island Road, right?
Right now it is, yes, sir.
Okay, so when is the because you mentioned that was a complete project.
So this phase is phase 1, and then phase 2 is what we're currently designing and permitting. We broke it up because of the permitting process. It's gonna take a little bit longer as we cross over a little bit of marshland over here. It's gonna take a longer permitting process, but we wanted to go ahead and get this connection started.
Okay, and what's the expectation once that section of the road is complete? Who owns it, city or county?
Believe right now that Little Creek is a county-owned road, so we would connect here.
And the new road.
No, the new section of airport frontage.
This one, it's owned by the city.
No, the new section that's being built that hasn't been built yet.
It's gonna be, I believe it's gonna be the counties.
Okay,
Because
that was my.
Little Creek, okay, so Little Creek right now connects to Sea Island Parkway. We are getting rid of this connection.
Right.
And we are going to curve the road around and it's gonna come to Lost Island. So it'll be one road and it's county owned.
So the county will own it from Little Creek to Lost Island, and of course, we know the city owns it from 21 to Lost Island.
Yes, sir.
It's already built.
Can you point out Ladies Island Elementary on there?
Ladies Island Elementary?
It's off there, it's off.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's off the page over here.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Any other questions about the access roads before I get to the mainline corridor?
One question
Yes,
about Beaufort High School realignment. What's the timeline on that?
It's been put on hold with a resolution with county council. The section of Sea Island Parkway, from the intersection improvements down to the bridge along with Beaufort High School realignment has been put on hold right now
Okay.
until we can study it a little further.
Okay.
And it'll be included in the master plan
Yes.
to go for Ladies Island?
Yes.
That was very controversial with county council.
Yes,
With, because of,
many reasons.
because of Crystal Lake Park and other reasons too.
Any other questions about the access roads? All right, so the mainline corridor is also in design right now. We are approaching right-of-way plans. As you know, there's only $30 million that was allocated to these projects. Right now, we're sitting at a deficit of about $42 million. So the idea is to take care of the access roads. That way, when we come in with the mainline corridor, it provides some routes in order to avoid the intersection where the main construction is going to occur along the corridor. The termini that where we're going right now is going to be a little through the intersection, approximately to Graco is where we're gonna have to improve the intersection. The rest of it is on hold, as I said, and then it's gonna come all the way down to the causeway past Walmart. All right, will you go to the next one?
Okay.
Yes.
One more question.
Yes.
Ladies Island Access Road.
Yes.
What's our timeline on that one?
So it's in right of way right now. We've got a meeting with a property owner and then our right of way agents are gonna be released to start the negotiations.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Very soon. Okay, great.
All right, and though we're focused on the northern region, will you scroll just a tad bit? Thank you. Though we're focused on the northern regions in this meeting, I just wanted to give you a quick update on the sidewalks in south of the Broad. So the Bluffton Parkway pathway has been completed. It was a connection from the roundabout up to Supperton at our Myrtle Park complex that has been completed. Burnt Church Road, we have included that sidewalk into a road improvement project that has been listed in our impact fees. So Burnt Church Road improvements has been in our impact fees, or CIP since 2010. We're including the pedestrian accommodations in the main road project, therefore we've taken it out of the referendum. All of these that are yellow are projects that have been a priority for the county. We identified 14 of the 24 pathways to become a priority, so everything that you're gonna see in yellow is the priority. Ulmer and Shad are both in design right now, approximately about 30%. Alljoy Road, you'll see, is not in yellow. However, after we left public comment in October of 2020, Alljoy Road was one that the constituents wanted. So we made a recommendation to council to put that on our priority list, and it is completely designed, it is completely permitted, and we'll be letting for construction here in just a few months. Next slide, please. All right, so once again, everything in yellow is what was on the priority list. This is what we're working on. So we've got Big Estate Road up there north of 17, along with Stewart Point Road. Big Estate's approximately 30% designed right now, and then Stewart Point Road is 70% designed. We're in right-of-way acquisition right now with our right-of-way agents, contacting property owners. There's about 38 tracks that we have to contact in order to put that sidewalk in. You have any questions about these two projects? No? Libby, can I have the next slide, please? All right, and this is gonna be the main bulk of my conversation. So I'm gonna start over at the Salem area. So with the Salem area, it is actually 3 projects. We've got Salem Road, Old Salem Road, and Burton Hill. I know you've probably seen all of the development that is occurring right there at the corner of Burton Hill and Old Salem Road. We have been working with the developers in order for them to install their frontage of the project because it's in our capital plans. Old Salem is in design, Burton is in design. Salem Road is the one that's almost at 70% design. So we'll be, the reason that one has delayed a little bit is because we're crossing over a wetland and therefore need to bridge that area. Depot Road, we're in right-of-way acquisition right now. That is going to be a 10-foot sidewalk, or 8-foot sidewalk all the way from the trailhead for the Spanish Moss Trail down to Rebo Road. And then there's a future plan to connect the Spanish Moss Trail into downtown Beaufort. So that'll be a second phase. Middle Road, we just had a public meeting for Middle Road and for Meridian. Both of those sidewalks, we've got Middle Road approximately 70% about to enter right-of-way. That area is extremely flat. So we've been trying to figure out where we're gonna get the drainage and how to get that stormwater to outlets. Meridian Road is about 30% designed right now. We are in public comment period. I'm still receiving public comments on those 2 projects. So we'll have a summary that's gonna be posted on our website shortly. Martin Luther King, this one is from 21 down to Jonathan Francis. It's gonna be a 6-foot sidewalk on the northern section of Martin Luther King, connecting from 21 up through the Penn Center area. One of the neat things that we're looking at doing with this project is also a heritage walk. So we're looking at podiums that we'd be able to put along the pathway that has pictures about the history of St. Helena and the Penn Center. So I'm very excited about that. We'll be working with National Park Service and the Penn Center in order to get that completed. We'll be coming to a public meeting here in June for that project. Rebo Road is completed already. It's connecting up from Ron to Lenora Park. And then we've got Broad River Boulevard Riley. That one is in design approximately 30%. And then Broad River Drive. That one is a very long and windy road. A lot of utilities that have to be coordinated. We are approximately 65% completed on that. We're coordinating with our stormwater team as they're working on some projects out there. We've also got some traffic calming and a road project out in that area. So all of that is being coordinated at one time. Do we have any questions about any of these pathway or sidewalk projects?
Can you remind me again which side of Broad River Drive it's gonna go?
So it's going to be on the east-north side,
Toward the park?
towards the park, yes ma'am.
Okay, got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Brittany.
Yes.
I was at the Low Country Council of Government last night, and they talked about the Greenway Pathway corridor coming from Maine to Florida. So the entrance to Beaufort is gonna be down the Spanish Moss Trail eventually?
Yes, so what you're speaking of is the East Coast Greenway or Greenbelt. So yes, it goes all the way from north, comes down. So the way that it routes right now is through 17. It actually comes through the Dale and Libico area. I
Oh,
believe
yes,
that's at
okay.
Kings Neck. It's going to cross over 21, come down 21. Eventually, the Spanish Moss Trail does become a part of that that greenway. We're currently separately from the sales tax. We're looking at a corridor plan for 21, and it's incorporating a future connection for a separate infrastructure. Because right now, it's just the side of the road that is the green belt. So you're riding on the edge of pavement.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Well, I had a question. How's the public comment been on Meridian Road?
The public comment so far has been very positive. There are a few that are just very concerned about the trees. Same thing with MLK. One of the things that I really want to note is when we are designing these sidewalks and multi-use pathways, our goal is to save the trees. So we are working around the trees, especially your grands, and we're trying to work through the specimens as well. These are SEDOT owned roads, and after we have completed them and turned them over, they'll be to SEDOT maintenance. So in their standards, if a pathway or sidewalk winds too much, then they're going to reject it, and then it becomes the county's to maintain and own. So we're working within their standards, but we are avoiding as many trees as possible, especially the grand oaks. Any other questions on this one?
Brittany, if I may.
Yes.
You mentioned the Stewart Point project. You said it's about 70% completed as far as the design is concerned, and you got, I think you mentioned 38 right-of-way acquisitions that was needed. Is that the total number for the entire sidewalk, or is that just the ones that you haven't gotten right away for as of yet?
No, so the 38 parcels or tracts that we are that we have to acquire some form of right-of-way, whether it's a construction easement, it's formal right-of-way, or it's slope permissions. So there's 38 of those tracts that we have to communicate with in order to get that. So that will either lead to a donation of the right-of-way for the public improvement project, negotiations, or condemnation. And then condemnation, of course, is up to our county council's decision. I believe I sent you an email, Mr. Dawson, on that pathway specifically.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and the next slide. All right, and I'll hand it over to Jared.
All right, so that's where we were and where we are.
Thank you.
And again, there's a lot going on there. Not a lot of it's on the streets because really we don't just have 3 projects, we have 34 projects. And the issue with the pathways, this is what we get a lot of information back is, oh, this is an easy road, why don't you have a pathway done? Well, the pathway she just mentioned has 38 parcels, of which not everybody wants a 10-foot pathway in front of their house. And they see that all the way up to the road as their property already, when in fact it's DOT's property, and we're just asking for more, which is more inside their own property. So to say it's an easy project is far from where we are. And then, of course, utilities and permitting is all the same as original. So we have 34 road projects, not 3 projects. So, but again, to that point, what we have is, what we hear is finish those projects. Why don't you have them done? And then, well, one of the reasons that we will be is cost. So all in all, top line, what's planned is a 15-year transportation sales tax to collect $1.625 billion. So the first thing that we had a sales tax committee that was stood up last fall, and they were a 6-person committee. It was actually the second committee we had a year, 2020, get my years mixed up, 2022. Council actually was looking at a transportation sales tax and had the first sales tax committee. That was a 17-member committee. They came up with a 10-year, $700 million plan. It got brought to council. Council was going forward, and then we also had green space that was authorized. So they said no for now, but not forever. We'll come back to it and move forward with green space for 2 years. And then county council said, let's stand up another sales tax committee. So last year they stood it up. They used that 10-year, $700 million as a jumping off point in the project list that was included. And the first thing that they said was, we've got to finish the old projects first. So whatever we do, let's fund those. So what you see here is the first three is 278 for $60 million. The Ladies Island, as Brittany mentioned, is about $40 million delta. And then the pathways, we don't have a funding source shown right there because we have over on this side of the screen that I'll talk to in just a second, some provision for pathway funding. So the intent there is we have funding in the current program, not for all 24, but I believe about 17 that we have totally funded for construction and all. So we have a delta of 7 projects there. So before we spend any more projects in pathways, we're going to fund those 7 first out of that over there. The second thing we heard, there's a provision in sales tax that allows for preservation. So green belts. Not to be confused with green space. So green space is its own statute, has its own specifics on how that can be used, and it's a little bit more flexible and broad. Green belts, there's not a lot of definition other than green belts. That's what it says in the statute. So that's a good thing and a bad thing depending on your perspective. But so the intent there is preservation, and there's not a project list of what those projects would be, but a good idea is more rural and critical versus green space. Somewhere in between the two is cousins. So 85 million is what's programmed there. And then one of the other things that the committee said is we've got to figure out how to get people to ride together, ride share, bus, mass transit. We're continuing to grow. South Carolina was in 2021 the 5th fastest growing state in the United States. In 2022, they were the third fastest growing state, and last year in 23, we were the fastest growing state in the entire nation. So more people are coming, and I think everybody in this room can attest to that. So we've got to figure out a way to enhance our mass transit system, and there's no better way to get that going before it's actually needed, and we have to retrofit that. So funding for that. And then the next 3 are specific projects. So if you've driven down to Bluffton towards Hilton Head, you've run into traffic on 170. So we started first with that as the concept. That was all that was in last year's program. In 2022 program was 170 improvements. But when we're there, one complaint that we always hear if you talk about traffic in that region is Argent Boulevard. Well, Argent Boulevard, everybody who drives on that can agree there's probably improvements that need to be made there. And then if we're looking at that, well, 278, we have 6 lanes all the way to 170, but from there back to the interstate is 4 lanes. So we said, okay, let's put those together. Again, similar to the pathway, the project is the same process, whether you're talking about an 8-foot path sidewalk or you're talking about a $200 million road project, same process. So basically put all those roads together and we called it the Triangle Project and $100 million. The great thing about the Triangle Project, Jasper County, Argent Boulevard's in Jasper County. They are going through a similar process as we are today, and they're evaluating, their council's entertaining a transportation sales tax. They're kind of following us, they're right behind us. They're looking at a 15-year program. Theirs obviously brings in a lot less than ours, but their main projects are the Triangle Project, 278 widening, and SC 46 170 improvements down south in Jasper County. So back and down south, so speaking of down south real quick, I'll jump a line, SC 46. So this would be improving from the traffic circle at SC 46 back towards the county line, towards Savannah. So improving that section of road. Again, once you get into Beaufort and to the traffic circle, you basically have 4 lanes all the way to Beaufort or all the way to Hilton Head. And then back up north is Rebo Road improvements. So obviously everybody here is familiar with what the planning, the reimagined Rebo Road planning that we've been discussing. We don't have that finalized. We don't know what that is eventually going to look like. We just know that there's going to be improvements there. And with improvements, there's going to be money that's needed. So this is a placeholder. What that project ends up looking like will be determined. We'll work on that collectively together and finish that. But we know that project will need some amount of funding. So that's what that's allocated for. So those are specific projects. One thing that was on the prior list was projects for the municipality. So those are large regional projects, those 3 big ones there at the bottom. But there's projects that the municipalities have that may not be the same regional significance, but still important to the community. For example, one on Hilton Head, if you hear about all the time, is Sea Pine Circle. So important project, very important to the town of Hilton Head, maybe not as important to the movement of traffic throughout the entire region. So last time, 10 years, 700 million, they had a $40 million allocation to the first committee did. And they said, hey, let's up that. We're talking about a longer program and the cost of doing business has increased. So basically put $60 million towards each of the municipalities. For the northern section, a little bit different than Hilton Head and Bluffton. They're pretty isolated up north. The intent here from the committee was that Beaufort, Port Royal, and unincorporated all kind of merged together. And obviously there'd have to be details on how we allocate that and prioritize that. But for the most part, everybody knows the Spine Road. That's a road that's important to the town of Port Royal. Everybody knows the stuff that we talked about already on Ladies Island is important, city of Beaufort and Beaufort County. So I think the details on how we figure that out, we are all going to get along as far as we recognize each other's needs. And then this is the most interesting part. We had a meeting staff did with DOT a while back and said, hey, if you guys were to do your own local sales tax program, what would you put in there? And they said two things. They said, first, don't skimp on the scope. So back to the first sales tax, if you promise this, the worst thing you can do is say, okay, well, we don't have the funds for that, and start cutting. And then you get a project that's completed, but it doesn't look anything like what you promised the voters initially. So if you're going to do a project, do the full scope. If you have to cut a full project, but don't cut the scope on a particular project. So that's the intent there with the first, is to make sure those projects are whole. And secondly, they said, is flexibility. And the reason they said flexibility is currently we have a $1.9 trillion infrastructure law that is a 5-year law. That law didn't exist 5 years ago. We're halfway through it. So it existed two and a half years ago is when it got implemented. That will expire in 2.5 years. We will still, if successful, will be under a sales tax. There will be some other law, and inside of that law, future grant opportunities that may not even exist today. So if you can create flexibility in your program to reach up and grab federal dollars, you'll be better prepared than others.
Just another note on flexibility. So there's only one funding source locally that goes to your transportation needs, and that is your road use fee that is on your tag, on your registration tag. So historically it's been $10, and then it increased to $16.50. It then decreased back down to $10 due to some litigation with the state. And then now it's going to be $20 here for Beaufort County. That is the only funding source that is not dictated by a committee or a CIP list. So all of the other funding sources, your impact fees, your gas tax, all of that is based on a CIP list, a 5-year plan for dirt road paving, a 5-year plan for road resurfacing preservation, or with your impact fees, only regional projects. So specifically when we're looking at local roads, neighborhood roads, those safety improvements that matter to constituents, that's where the flexibility is needed.
There's
Yes.
stipulations on where that road fee can be spent.
Where the road use fee, it's for transportation improvement projects.
That's a county.
It's a county road.
County.
Yes. So right now at $10, we're collecting approximately 2.5 a year, 2.5 million. So when we increase it, we're looking closer to about $5 million. So that is going to be a nice increase for the county, but we are expending with our road use fee, it's primarily for our dirt road paving. We're expending about 3.5 a year.
So when you say county, what specifically do you mean? Unincorporated county, countywide?
It can be
Countywide.
countywide. So the road use fee is obviously separate in sales tax, but it's collected on all vehicles that are registered in the
Yes, so it can be used everywhere on county roads, municipal roads, and state roads, no private roads.
That $20 has already been implemented, right? Is it just not?
It will start on, yes, so it starts in the new fiscal year, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. So these programs, this is, like I said, the flexibility component that the sales tax committee recommended to county council. And so these are different elements. So safety projects. So safety projects is at an intersection. Everybody says, okay, well, you just need a right turn here, and that'll make this intersection safer. Well, these are projects that may not be, when we compare safety projects to the state, our intersections may warrant some need here locally, we think, but they may not be of significant to the volumes and the crash data as compared to other intersections across the state. So even though the state has safety programs, doesn't necessarily mean their dollars make it down here.
Jared, is that where the Ladies Island Drive and?
Yeah, so projects,
Road, is
yeah,
that where that
so
would
stuff
fit in?
that you would see, so Cat Island, Meridian, that intersection.
Well, the one that's the worst is Ladies Island and Reba Road.
Yeah, Ladies Island Drive, Reba Road would either fit in the Reba Road funding or in
okay.
the safety project funding.
Okay.
Paris Island Gateway and Savannah Highway, that would fit in a project like this. So those are those elements that you don't know what's wrong, you just know that that signal needs improvement, or there's a turn lane, or there's a development that's occurred that since that development has put pressure over here,
Okay.
that's what those dollars. So these are the really flexible dollars that, and you can see how it's prioritized with the most funding, because the most any project you do has a safety element.
Sure. Okay.
So dirt road paving and resurfacing, that was something that was important. So we already have a dirt road paving program, but to continue that and pour gasoline on that, as well as a resurfacing program, so 180 million towards that. Pathways are an important element here locally, and we have a lot of good pathways already, but again, want to continue to fund that. But first want to finish the existing pathways before we take on new pathways. Resiliency and emergency evacuation. This one was interesting that the committee came up with this, and this is, we have a lot of projects or a lot of roads that are low lying. Some of them that flood just in fair weather on a high tide. So others that are causeways and different types of roads. So this would be looking at those roads or emergency evacuation routes that need some level of improvement. I know I've heard Chowin Creek before.
Yes, sir.
More than once. So that would be where something like that, if we need to expand that bridge to allow for capacity, because we've got one way from there all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, that would be a way for us to facilitate those type projects. And this transportation technology and access roads. So if you've ever sat at a signal and then you get the green light and you go, and then you hit the next signal and it's red, they're not talking with one another, they're not communicating. And so transportation technologies, there's technologies out there that help with that flow. A lot of these are lower cost projects, but they have a pretty positive amount of impact on how much benefit they can provide. And technologies are continuing to develop. So the idea of having fiber to all our signals so they're speaking to one another, and implementing any other, also the access roads, like Brittany mentioned on the Ladies Island project, trying to get everybody to a frontage road system to get them to a signal so they can have safe left turns. And then lastly, this is a long program. I can't sit here today and tell you what roads are going to be needed specifically in 5 years or 10 years. And so what we have programmed is future projects, so 175 million. So it actually serves two purposes. One, we weren't expecting that these projects, that we'd have COVID and the price of our doing business would go up the way it did over the last 3 years. So this helps if there's underfunded in projects or project escalation, as well as if there's a project that comes on in 5 years that we know we need this project, but it's not located anywhere on this list. We can go and attack that project. And again, that helps us go find other funds to marry up with our local funds if we have the flexibility, if there's a new program established. So that's what's included right now, and where we are in the process to kind of update you that. So we've had first and second reading, County Council had in January and February. They took a pause before they did third reading and said, you know what, let's take this out throughout the community, get some input, some feedback. And so they held 5 informational sessions in the month of April, 1st of May. We just completed those sessions. It came back to County Council 2 weeks ago and basically came back to get referred back to committee so that committee could discuss it further and say, okay, let's talk about all the different things that we heard at these meetings. Are there elements that we heard as common themes that we should look at and adjust or modify? And the answer to that was yes, there was definitely things. One of the big things was the time. We heard that a lot. And a couple other specific projects. So green belts, that was another thing that we heard. That was, some people questioned whether that was enough. And so those things will be considered at Public Facilities Committee next Tuesday. And then the intent there is that Public Facilities will take the comments that were heard, discuss that, come up with a modified version, and then refer that back to County Council for, to get to third reading. So timeline wise, in order for it to make it to the ballot in November, it has to be fully approved by County Council and sent to voters registration by August 15th. So County Council has a period of time to massage it, and then still fit that timeline, but that's where it is currently. That it is, like I said, Tuesday will be coming to the Public Facilities Committee for a discussion, and we'll see what it looks like thereafter. And that's it. That's where we are.
Jared, how much of a difference in the number of projects or the dollar amount of the projects does there have to be to warrant it to be a substantive change where it has to go back to a first reading instead of?
We had that discussion locally, so we don't have anything specifically in our policies that say what substantiates a substantial change. However, in our discussion, anything that we change, if we go from 15 years to 12 years, it goes from 1.6 to 1.2 billion. So that's $400 million. To me, I feel that that's substantial. Even if the project list stays pretty the same, others can argue, but I think the safest thing is more than likely, to your point, it wouldn't have to go back to first reading necessarily. We've already had second reading, but it more than likely would go back to second reading to be redone as second reading and then move forward as a third reading. So there may be extra time required. Good question.
Any other questions?
Y'all gotta have more questions than that.
I think you've been around the block, and so
That's a good point. I'm glad somebody's been listening, so that's okay too.
I'd just like to commend you and
Absolutely.
Brittany and others, because I went to that first meeting and then I went to the meeting on St. Helena, and there was a world of difference in the questions that were asked, and I think the public understood that they were being listened to.
Well,
It was a,
I'm glad to hear that. And
I
you
know it
never
was a
know.
hard process, but it was well worth it.
Well, and the whole goal was to refine, and I think we did get better along the way. So appreciate that. Thank you.
And all of this information, along with the 2018 sales tax referendum, is located on our website, BeaufortCountyPenny.com. You can sign up for our newsletters, get notifications of status updates, public meetings, and then all the information up there is regularly updated.
And then that's in your handout too, the project list that's up here on the board, as well as a history. So real quick, if you didn't make it to the informational meetings, this is not Beaufort County's first sales transportation, but would be the fourth. So we were the first ones in the state to have a transportation sales tax in 1998. And then you can see the other projects there on that second handout in 2006 and 18.
well, Jared, I just put it on the table that I'm for the 15 years and for the amount of money. I think the effort and the magnitude of what is being presented here is definitely needed. And if you cut the years, you cut the amount, and it's going to catch up with us sooner or later. So unless I'm convinced by someone that we should cut it, I'm going to stick with the presentation that you have right here.
Well, I look forward to hearing that on Tuesday.
Can I have a comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. You have a question?
No, I noticed on your flyer that you say you're gonna do a citizens-led oversight committee, much like we do.
Yeah.
I just wanna comment that is extremely valuable, not only to the public, because you've got somebody that holds you accountable
Yeah.
to the public, but to your benefit. I mean, we find our committee to be most helpful to staff. They give us great comments on how to do things, improve the way we do things.
Yeah.
So it's been extremely valuable, and you will like having that committee.
Well, I'm glad
It
to
sounds
hear that.
kind of scary at
Yeah,
first, you know,
yeah.
it really does. But they've been so valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never want to not have one.
Well, yeah, we don't get to hear that perspective very
Yeah.
often, so thank you for sharing that. But it was something that the sales tax committee said, hey, transparency, that was another big topic. And the school district's done a great job in their 2019 and now their recent 23. And so they said, if approved, implement a citizen committee much like school district has.
Don't
With
steal our.
no elected officials.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
elected officials, right? I had a question on how that would work, and there's no better compliment than to copy someone
Yeah,
else's good
absolutely.
ideas.
We don't
but
have to invent the wheel.
We don't have to reinvent that. What about the money that goes to the individual, like Hilton Head, Bluffton, and then north of the Broad? Would the oversight committee have any oversight of that too, or was that just
To
give it to
be
them?
determined. I think that's a,
Because I've been asked that question.
that's a good question.
I've seen pros and cons
At the
both
end of the
ways.
day, the funding, this is a county ordained sales tax. So the county has to be responsible for the expenditures of the
Okay,
funds.
gotcha.
What that looks like as far as how it's divvied out and how it's element, whether it's grantee or whatever that looks like, is to be determined. But yes, good question. Kurt?
How are you, inflation, so are these like present day numbers with like 25 or 30%
Yeah, so
tucked in, and are you accommodating? how much
yeah,
higher?
so these are not project estimate numbers. None of these projects on this list are 100% design. So these are estimate numbers that have a safety factor in there. Now, none of these projects are going to have a 69% inflation rate like we had since COVID. That was a black swan event that nobody predicted. However, they do have a safety factor in there, and the intent, the Triangle project is more than $100 million. We know that going into it, but the intent there is to pair that up with Jasper's County sales tax, and then behind the bridge project, that's the highest priority project in the region that would be attractive for outside funds. So similar to 278, we knew that $80 million was not the bridge cost. It was just to get us there. Now, we didn't know that it would double in price, but so.
Further questions? Jared, thank you,
Yes, thank y'all very
you and
much.
your team.
Appreciate it.
It's very comprehensive, and thank you for the review. Best wishes as it goes forward. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes before our allotted time. I want to get to item number 6, discussion of NERPIC membership and chairmanship. As you recall, last year with the dissolution of the Metropolitan Planning Commission, we lost our chair from there as a alternating vice president with the chair from the Beaufort County Planning Commission. Now that we have reconstituted the planning commissions in both municipalities, the question arises, do we make the chairs of the planning commissions in those municipalities members of this committee and include them in the rotational scheme for chairmanship? I'd like your thoughts on that.
No, I mean, that's the appropriate, I mean, our original charter had that configuration with MPC. I think it's appropriate for the other planning commissions to be folded into it as well.
I
have no problem having
Yeah.
a robust membership here.
Okay. Would it be your chairman of the planning commission in your municipalities?
Yes,
Mike, are you
think
the
that
chair?
That's what it was.
No, I was nominated.
Benji.
I'm
Okay.
vice chair,
Who's
but
the chair?
nominated to come to this.
Okay, well then that would
We
be.
could do it that way,
Yeah,
just
that'd be
whoever
fine.
Yeah,
the
either the
municipalities
chairman or
nominate.
his designee.
All right,
That's
we'll work that out at the end of the year. We'll be transitioned to a chair in one of the municipalities and be on a rotational scheme for the next years going forward. Thank you, thank you.
For sure.
Is there any further discussion about that? Questions?
But are.
All right,
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great.
I just wanted to follow up on the unsheltered population presentation that we had from Fred Lyda and Anna. Back in March, the committee had requested some sort of memorandum of understanding to understand how we might collaborate as a region in the under shelter program movement going forward. Conversation was with Ben, and Ben was under the understanding that the presentation was really directed at service providers and churches and so on in a collaborative way to forward some of the initiatives for unsheltered population. However, during our presentation, if you recall, there were about 6 or 7 things that Fred and Anna mentioned as positive actions that this committee could agree to take and as part of our resolution. And there were some additionals that were provided to you in the handout that was submitted in the email with the minutes and the agenda for this month. I recall also that you had wanted something decided for April, and by April, so that when you got together with SoLoco, there could be a unified presentation to SoLoco that would then be expanded to include the SoLoco municipalities and county. What is your latest thinking on going forward on how this might proceed? My recommendation would be number one is again, if you're looking for a memorandum of understanding, I would ask that perhaps you use the planning people from each of the municipalities in the county to work with Ben to come up with a succinct list of actions that you think you can support for agreement at the next meeting or two down the road.
Ed, it seems to me that it's stalled, and I say that because the county declined to come to SoLoco after initially committing to make a presentation, and we just wanted them to take the same presentation at SoLoco that they made here, and they declined to do it. So I'm not sure where we are with that.
You mean, talking about Ben's office? Oh, I was calling.
Through the county administrator. So I had several conversations with John, and they refused to come to SoLoco to get the presentation. So
Wow.
I'm not sure if there's more to that story underneath, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready to proceed until we can get to the point where they can at least present to SoLoco.
Yeah, you're right.
Y'all agree?
I'm trying to remember the name of, wasn't there a regional authority that divvied out the resources and there was an opportunity that we could create our own here? Because as it stands now, it goes out basically between Savannah to Charleston, and we get bypassed.
The continuum?
Is that, yeah, Continuum, thank you. I could not remember what, yeah, Continuum. What was there any further conversation on creating our own, sending up our own?
There was a recommendation to do that. I think Fred mentioned that, but and just go to deal directly with HUD and bypass the Charleston's, since most of them money they dole out outside of
Goes to,
jurisdiction.
yeah, kind of stays in those two
But
pockets,
that
but
would be
bypasses us.
something we'd have to resolve to move forward on and get approval from municipalities in the county to do that, I believe.
Was there an appetite by the actual organizations to do that, or were they, yeah, that's,
I think Fred and Anna and Ben would love to see the continuum of care more locally oriented as compared to coming, all the HUD money coming through Charleston. But I don't know what kind of,
Yeah.
it would have to be a county driven.
Do you want to pursue this issue? Do you,
See, I guess we can, those of us on county council can find out why they can't present it so loco.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I had a difficult time understanding it myself.
and then the day center or prosperity center, however you want to call it, I think that needs to be addressed as well and move forward, because that's something that we can get done. So,
well, there was a recommendation that each of the communities, municipalities have a prosperity center. Right now, I think there's only one that's perhaps been drafted for northern Beaufort County region.
I think between NERPIC and SoLoco, there could be a lot of momentum that could be gained
Yeah.
for a lot of positive benefit for their mission, which benefits all of us, so.
Well, let's see what we can find out then, I guess, from maybe then we can move forward unless there's a sense to do something more rapidly than, no? Okay. All right, moving on. We have a list of future agenda items. We do have a speaker that we aligned up for several months ago for the next meeting on Palmetto Breeze. If you, I think there's.
you think that study's gonna be back?
We have someone already scheduled to do that?
Yeah.
Palmetto Breeze?
Palmetto Breeze. And we have, you have the list of future agenda items. A couple of things that were recommended to be added to that last time, I believe, was the Northern Urban Transportation Plan that's being worked on, and the Ladies Island Plan. So we'll put those on the list of potential future agenda items. Anything else?
Do we want to circle back to the fire EMS conversation, or leave that for farther down the road?
I don't know, I think we can leave it on the list.
Yeah, it's on the list.
Down the
Probably need to be a
road.
little better prepared,
That's
and there need
fine.
to be
You
some
think so?
discussions that take place.
Yeah, so
before
please,
bringing
as you think of things that you'd like to have more broad exposure to for the region, then by all means.
But I do wanna keep it on our radar,
Oh,
absolutely.
Actually, I have something to add to it.
Good.
All right, anything further for the cause from anybody? All right, if not, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.